When it was the second night, Dunyazad said to Shahrazad, "Sister, finish your story of the merchant and the Ifrit for us." "With pleasure," replied Shahrazad, "if the king gives me permission." And when the king gave it, she went on, "I have heard, O fortunate king and rightly guided ruler, that when the merchant was about to cut the throat of the calf, he was moved by pity and told the herdsman to keep the calf among the other beasts." The Ifrit was listening with astonishment to what the old man with the gazelle was saying, and the man went on. "Lord of the kings of the jinn, while all this was going on, my wife, now this gazelle, was looking on and telling me to kill the calf, because it was fat, but I could not bring myself to do this, and so I told the herdsman to take it away, which he did. The next day, as I was sitting there, he came back to me and said, 'I have something to tell you that will please you, and you owe me a reward for my good news.' I agreed to this, and he went on, 'Master, I have a daughter who, as a young girl, was taught magic by an old woman we had staying with us. Yesterday, when you gave me the calf, I went to the girl, and when she saw it, she covered her face, shed tears, but then burst into laughter. Then she said, 'Father, do you hold me so cheap that you bring strange men in to me?' 'Where are these strange men?' I asked. 'And why are you laughing and crying?' She said, 'This calf you have with you is our master's son, who is under a spell laid upon him and his mother by his father's wife.' This is why I was laughing, but the reason why I wept was that his father killed his mother. I was astonished by this, and as soon as I found that it was morning, I came to tell you." When I heard what the man had to say, I went out with him, drunk, although not on wine, with the joy and delight that I was feeling. When I got to his house, his daughter welcomed me, kissing my hands, while the calf came and rolled on the ground in front of me. I asked her, "Is what you say about this calf true?" "Yes, master," she assured me. "This is your darling son." "Girl," I told her, "if you free him, you can have all the beasts and everything else that your father looks after." She smiled and said, "Master, I only want this on two conditions, the first being that you marry me to him, and the second that I be allowed to put a spell on the one who enchanted him and keep her confined, for otherwise I shall not be safe from her scheming." When I heard what she had to say, I promised to give her what she wanted as well as everything that was in her father's charge, adding that I would even give her permission to kill my wife. At that, she took a bowl, filled it with water and recited a spell over it, after which she sprinkled the water over the calf, saying, "If you are a calf and this is how Almighty God created you, stay in this shape and don't change, but if you are under a spell, then return to your original shape with the permission of Almighty God." The calf shuddered and became a man, at which I fell on him and said, "For God's sake, tell me what my wife did to you and your mother." He told me what had happened, and I said, "My son, God has sent you a rescuer to restore your rights." I then married the herdsman's daughter to him, and she transformed my wife into this gazelle, saying, "This is a beautiful shape and not a brutish one, repellent to the sight." The girl stayed with us for some time until God chose to take her to himself, and my son went off to India, the country of the man with whom you have had this experience. I myself took my wife, this gazelle, and have traveled from place to place looking for news of him until fate brought me here and I saw this merchant sitting weeping. This is my story. It is indeed a marvelous tale, the Ifrit agreed, and I grant you a third share in his blood. At this point, the old man with the two Seleucus came up and asked the Ifrit, "If I tell you what happened to me and my brothers, these two dogs, and you find it the most amazing and astonishing of stories, will you transfer to me a third of this man's offense?" The Ifrit agreed, and the man began. "Lord of the kings of the jinn, these two dogs are my brothers, I being the third. On his death my father left us 3,000 dinars and each one of us opened a shop for trade. I had not been there for long before my eldest brother, now one of these dogs, sold the contents of his shop for 1,000 dinars, bought trade goods and set off on his travels. He had been away for a whole year when one day as I was in my shop a beggar came up to me and stopped. I wished him well, but he said, in tears, 'Don't you know me any more?' When I looked at him closely, I saw that this was my brother, and so I got up to welcome him and brought him into the shop. I asked him how he was, and he said, "Don't ask. My wealth has gone and my circumstances have changed." I took him to the baths, gave him some of my own clothes, and then brought him back home. Then I checked my accounts and the sales figures of my shop, and I found that I had made a profit of 1,000 dinars on a capital of 2,000. I divided this with my brother, telling him to forget that he had ever traveled abroad. He took the money gladly and opened another shop. Some time later, my second brother, now this other dog, sold everything he had, with the intention of traveling. We tried unsuccessfully to stop him, but he bought trade goods and set out with some others. He too spent a whole year away before coming back to me in the same state as his brother. "Brother," I told him, "didn't I tell you not to go?" But he replied, "This was something decreed by fate, and here am I, a poor man, penniless and without even a shirt." I took him to the baths and gave him a new suit of my own clothes to put on, before bringing him to my shop, where we then ate and drank. I told him, "Brother, I check the accounts of my shop once every new year, and any surplus I find I shall share with you." When I did my audit, I found that I had 2,000 dinars, and after praising the exalted Creator, I gave him 1,000 and kept the other 1,000 myself. My brother opened another shop, but after a time he and my other brother proposed that I should go off with them on a voyage. I refused, asking, "What did you get from your travels to make me imagine that I could make a profit?" I refused to listen to them, and we stayed there trading in our shops. Every year they would make the same proposal to me and I would not agree, until after 6 years I finally accepted and told them I would go with them. I asked them to show me what money they had, only to find that they had nothing at all, having squandered everything on food, drink and entertainment. I didn't say a word to them but checked the accounts of my shop and sold what I owned together with all my shop goods, leaving me, to my delight, with a total of 6,000 dinars. I divided this in half, telling my brothers that they and I could have 3,000 dinars with which to trade, while I would bury the remaining 3,000 in case the same thing happened to me as had happened to them. In that case I would have money left over to allow us to reopen our shops. They agreed to this and I handed each of them 1,000 dinars, keeping 1,000 for myself. We provided ourselves with what we had to have in the way of trade goods and made our preparations for travel, hiring a ship and loading our goods on board. After a whole month's journey we brought them to a city, where they fetched us a tenfold profit. We were about to sail off again when on the shore we came across a girl dressed in rags and tatters. She kissed my hand and asked if I was a charitable man, in which case she would reward me. "I love charity and good deeds," I told her, "even if you give me no reward." "Marry me, master," she said, "and take me to your country. I have given myself to you, treat me kindly, for I am someone who deserves kindness and generosity. I shall pay you back for this, and don't be misled by the state I am in now." When I heard this, I felt a yearning for her, as God, the great and glorious, had decreed, and so I took her, gave her clothes and provided her with elegantly furnished accommodation on the ship. I treated her with respect, and as our journey went on I fell so deeply in love with her that I could not bear to leave her by night or by day. In my concern for her I neglected my brothers, who grew jealous of me, envying my wealth and the quantity of my goods. They spent their time eyeing all this, and they discussed killing me and taking what I had, saying, "Let us kill our brother, and then all this will be ours." Satan made this seem good to them, and so, finding me alone and asleep by the side of my wife, they picked us both up and threw us overboard. My wife woke, a shudder ran through her, and she became an Ifrita. She then carried me to an island where she left me for a time before coming back at dawn and saying, "I am your servant, and it was I who saved your life by carrying you off, with the permission of Almighty God. You must know that I am one of the jinn, and when I saw you I fell in love with you, as God had decreed. For I believe in him and in his apostle, may God bless him and give him peace. I came to you wearing rags, as you saw, but you married me and now I have saved you from drowning. I am angry with your brothers and will have to kill them." I was astonished to hear this, and I thanked her for what she had done but forbade her to kill my brothers. I then told her the whole story of my dealings with them, and this prompted her to say, "Tonight I shall fly off to them, sink their ship and destroy them." I implored her in God's name not to do that, reminding her of the proverb that tells those who do good to those who wrong them, the evildoer's own deeds are punishment enough for him, and pointing out that, at all events, they were my brothers. She continued to insist, despite my pleading with her, and she then flew off with me and put me down on the roof of my own house. I opened the doors, brought out the money that I had buried, and opened up my shop, after greeting the people there and buying goods for trade. When I went home that evening, I found these two dogs tied up, and when they caught sight of me they came up with tears in their eyes and attached themselves to me. Before I realized what was happening, my wife told me, "These are your brothers." "Who did this to them?" I asked, and she said, "I sent a message to my sister. It was she who transformed them, and they will not be freed from the spell for 10 years. My brothers have now been like this for 10 years, and I was on my way to get them released when I came across this man. He told me his story, and I decided not to leave him until I saw what was going to happen between you and him. This is my tale." "It is a marvelous one," agreed the Ifrit, adding, "I grant you a third share in the blood he owes for his crime." The third old man, with the mule, now said, "If I tell you a more amazing story than these two, will you grant me the remaining share?" The Ifrit agreed, and the man went on. "Sultan and leader of the jinn, this mule was my wife. I had been away for a year on my travels, and when I had finished I came back to her. This was at night, and I saw a black slave lying in bed with her. The two of them talked, flirted, laughed, kissed and played with each other. My wife caught sight of me and came to me with a jug of water over which she uttered a spell. She sprinkled the water over me and said, 'Leave this shape of yours and take the form of a dog.' Immediately I became a dog, and she drove me out through the door of the house. I went on until I came to a butcher's shop, where I started gnawing bones. The butcher saw me and took me into his house, where his daughter covered her face from me and said, 'Are you bringing a man into me?' 'Where is there a man?' asked her father, and she said, 'This dog is a man over whom his wife has cast a spell, but I can free him from it.' 'Do that, for God's sake,' said her father, and she took a jug of water, spoke some words over it, and sprinkled some of it on me. 'Go back to your original shape,' she said, and that is what I did. I kissed the girl's hand and said, 'I would like you to use your magic to do to my wife what she did to me.' She gave me some water and told me, 'When you find her asleep, sprinkle this water over her, and say what you like, for she will become whatever you want.' I took the water and went to my wife, whom I found sleeping. I sprinkled her with the water and said, 'Leave this shape and become a mule,' which she did there and then, and it is she whom you can see, Sultan and chief of the kings of the jinn." "Is that true?" the man asked the mule, at which it nodded its head, conveying by gesture the message, "That is my story, and that is what happened to me." When the old man had finished his tale, the Ifrit, trembling with delight, granted him a third of the merchant's blood. Morning now dawned, and Shahrazad broke off from what she had been allowed to say. "What a good, pleasant, delightful and sweet story this is!" exclaimed Dunyazad, at which Shahrazad told her, "How can this compare with what I shall tell you this coming night, if I am still alive and the king spares me?" "By God," the king said to himself, "I am not going to kill her until I hear the rest of this remarkable story," and so they spent the rest of the time embracing one another until the sun had fully risen. The king then went to his court. The troops arrived together with the vizier, and when everyone was there, he gave his judgments, appointing some officials, dismissing others, and issuing orders and prohibitions until evening. The court was then dismissed, and the king returned to his palace, where, when night came, he lay again with Shahrazad.